Let's talk about comparing agent versus agentless orchestration tools such as Chef, Puppet, Ansible, and SaltStack. So these orchestration tools are different in several ways. For instance, Ansible is agentless, so it will not require a piece of software running on the remote devices that it will control. Whereas SaltStack, Chef, and Puppet will need agents. For instance, Puppet will need a Puppet agent, Chef will need a Chef client, and SaltStack will need a Salt minion on the remote devices. Some Cisco devices have support for Puppet agents and Chef clients. For instance, the Nexus line of Cisco devices have available Puppet agents and Chef clients, and also, for instance, the ASR 9000 series also have support for Puppet and Chef. If you want to configure Puppet, you will need to know some Ruby, but be aware that Puppet will use something that is known as the domain-specific language. The same thing happens for Chef, and for SaltStack and Ansible, you will need to know YAML, mostly YAML, and in some rare occasions you might use Python. In order to configure your end devices, you will create scripts. For Puppet, you will create manifests. For Chef, you will use recipes. For Ansible, you will create playbooks. For SaltStack, that is a little bit more complex. If you want to gather several scripts into some sort of libraries, you can use Puppet modules, Chef cookbooks, or Ansible modules. Ansible will let you do many things with your end devices using roles, tasks, and variables. In order to control your solution, you will need a Puppet console in the case of Puppet, a workstation in the case of Chef. You will do everything in the Salt master in the case of SaltStack, or you will need a management node in the case of Ansible. Now, most of these tools were born in Linux, so they are more related to Linux. For instance, Ansible will need Windows support for Linux in order to, for instance, to install your Ansible software in Windows. If you want to, for instance, install these solutions on the cloud, you will need Puppet in the cloud, or hosted Chef, SaltCloud, or Ansible Tower. These solutions come with a command line interface. So the command for Puppet is Puppet. For Chef it is knife. For SaltStack you will use salt commands and command runs. And for Ansible, several variations of Ansible. Remember that these products were born as free versions, but they were later acquired by software companies. So you can use Puppet open source, or OpenChef, or SaltStack Community Edition, or Ansible Core if you want a free version. But you can buy licenses and acquire Puppet Enterprise, Chef Automate, SaltStack Enterprise, or Ansible Tower. In order to communicate with remote devices, Ansible will use Secure Shell. SaltStack will use some special encryption protocols. And Chef and Puppet will use HTTPS. So you can notice some advantages and disadvantages of each of these tools. For instance, Ansible is easy to learn, whereas Puppet and Chef will have a more problematic learning curve for beginners. But for instance, Puppet and Chef will be compatible with RESTful APIs, so that is an advantage. Whereas Ansible will always need Secure Shell with all your end devices. So that's it.